the product needs to be good quality. The service needs to be really good quality. Otherwise, they can't sustain it for long enough.
Don't quit your job until you have tested and created income on your side project. You can actually succeed at a coaching business 10 to 12 hours a week if you are committed and if you are focused on overcoming that discomfort. And when you run out of money, or if you're not making money, that's a huge energy drain. So at the end of the day, it actually does become a drain on your energy. And that's almost the same thing. If you quit your job, not making money is like you're going to run out of energy faster than anything.
The longer you kind of stay with it and not make money, the riskier it is for you to lose that.
I'm Daniel Fernandez, one of your hosts today, and Faisal Ansan is your other host. And today's podcast is sponsored by Coaching Mastery Community. And the topic for today is pricing your coaching programs. And are you charging too much or are you charging too little? So welcome, Coaches Nation. We are so glad you are here and that you are actively building a business as a coach, because what you do in the world is super important. And if what you want to do is keep on doing it and keep on building your business as a coach, keep on serving other people, you have to learn how to sell. And if you want to learn how to sell, you have to learn how to price. And you have to learn, there's different ways to price, but we're going to talk about the different ways to price today. And I think you're going to really appreciate the different frames, and you can decide how you want to price for yourself. We're going to walk you through the framework of pricing today on our call today. And I know, Faisal, you have tons of experience here, as do I. So let's get into that, Faisal. Are you excited to talk about our topic today?
I'm super excited to talk about that. But and those who are listening to our podcast for the first time, or you've been listening to the podcast for a while, know that we actually have a community of coaches that we're running in the background, Coaching Mastery Community, that is a sponsor for this podcast as well. And we're serving coaches to actually build their businesses now. Not just build their business, but actually what makes our community unique is we are helping coaches develop mastery in their skill sets as well to improve the quality of their services. Because if your product or service is not good, it doesn't actually matter how good you are in marketing. You won't get any clients. Even if you were good at sales initially, if the quality of your services are not good, you're not going to get referrals. You're not going to build a sustainable business. And so what we do is we help coaches within our community develop coaching mastery and business mastery. And we're constantly supporting and keeping coaches accountable to go towards the dreams that they have to build a sustainable coaching business and to serve people at the higher level. And if you are ready to build your business, just click on the link below. It's actually 30 days free for the first 30 days. And after that, there is a charge. But you get to experience the whole community for the first 30 days, all our lives. You can go through all our course, all the materials. And if you feel like it gives you the value, which we know that it will, then you can stay with us. If not, then you can just take advantage of it and move forward.
And one of the things we did in that community just this week, we had our 90-day challenge for pro members, and we talked about how to craft your offers. And part of that was pricing. So we're going to talk today about pricing because it's a really, important topic, but also we've just been talking about it with the community. And so go to if you want to see more of our trainings, you can go to cmc.coach and join our community for more. But today our topic is pricing. So I want to talk about like one big frame of pricing, which is 3 different ways to look at pricing. And Faisal, you ready to jump into this?
I do. Before we go into pricing, the one thing, just because we're assuming that a lot of coaches know about offers, but I don't want to make that such an assumption, because I've met a lot of coaches where I've talked to them and I'll ask them, what's your offer? There is no offer a lot of times. Or if there is an offer, it's very unclear what that offer is. And so what we mean by offer is that at some point in the journey for your clients, wherever it started, whether they came from a referral or they came through your network or they came through your nurturing process online, wherever that person, at some point, they will get on a call with you. You will serve them and make an offer. An offer is an exchange of value. You're giving them, your offer is a service or product that adds value to their life, which means that it helps them solve their problems or helps them grow in the context of coaching, which is the value for them. And they will exchange money for that value that they're getting. Now, a lot of coaches they will either not make the offer, they will take people through all kinds of journeys, they will create podcasts, they will create a social media following, but they won't make an offer. So as a starting point, you need to have an offer for you to actually have a business. And within that offer is the pricing that we're talking about. And a lot of coaches, one of the reasons why they don't make an offer because they're so confused about the pricing, because they're told all sorts of things by marketers and every other coaches. Well, you should charge a lot higher. You should charge tens of thousands of dollars. And some would say, well, why are you charging so much? And then they're kind of left in this place where they don't know what to do, so they don't do anything. They don't make an offer, or even if they are making an offer, they're not confident about the offer that they're making, so they don't have any sale on the other side. And I'll say this, the one of the most important metrics for you to track is the offer, like how many offers have you made and how much is that, and what are the conversion rates from that offer. If you can just track that, that's a lead measure that you can track, that you can control. You will understand how to build a business, or at least the beginning stages of a business.
I love that. So the frame that Faisal just stated, you can't talk about pricing if you don't have an offer, right? And an offer, just to summarize, Faisal, see if I captured everything you're saying in a very short version, which is an offer is an exchange of value for money, very simply. And what you want to do is track how many offers you're making. That's the most important question. Track how many offers you're making and how you're converting them, how frequently they convert. Once you have an offer that you're making, you're going to make progress, right? And so the question is like, how do you price that offer? Hey, I just made an offer, but I didn't know what price I should have. I was like, I was going to say this and I went for that. And I was just, I remember this happened to me, early on in my career. I was like, okay, I want to offer this number. And I got there. I was like, I can't offer. That's too high. And I chickened out and I offered a lower number. And I don't remember whether it converted or not that time. I'm pretty sure it didn't. But this time I'm thinking of. And there's other times that I charged less and I got the sale and it didn't go very well after the first half and they didn't want to make the second payment and they just ended their program. And so like, did I charge too much? Did I not offer enough value? I wasn't sure. So there's a few different places you want to think about, parts you want to think about when you're thinking about your pricing for your coaching offer. And I'm going to start with the frame of the first part of what I want to talk about is the triple frame of how to think about pricing your offer. So there's going to be 3 sections of this, right? The first section is, what did you ideally want to charge? And the way to think about this is, what will the desired lifestyle that you want to have that will be supported through your coaching business, what would that be, right? What is your ideal lifestyle equal in terms of what income you need to cover that based on the expenses that it'll take? So like that may not be the today pricing that you offer, but knowing your ideal pricing, what is the pricing that you need to make it work for your lifestyle that you want? That's what I would call ideal lifestyle pricing, right? And when you do that, there's an exercise we do in part 1 of our 90-day client creation challenge, which is establish your vision. And part of that is, what is the lifestyle you want? Therefore, how much do you need to make? Therefore, what should you be charging based on how many clients you probably have space for? What does that look like? That is like the ideal pricing. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Faisal, before we move on to part 2 of it.
Yes, and this is important. Well, and a lot of coaches might be thinking, well, what I can price it anywhere we want. We'll get to that, but remember that almost every price in the business world is arbitrary. It gets stabilized by market competition. But in the beginning, every price point for any product is completely arbitrary. Like the phones that you buy, the cost for these phones is not more than $10, but you're paying over $2,000 or something like that at this point. Why? And how are they able to charge this much? And there's a lot in there. We won't go into branding and all that stuff, but it's arbitrary. They've made up the price. It has nothing to do with how much they have made how much they've spent to make the product. In fact, the bigger the margin, the more they can make, the more sustainable the company is. And of course, the product needs to be good quality. The service needs to be really good quality. Otherwise, they can't sustain it long enough. They can't build a business. They can't get enough people to use it, because pretty soon people get caught up with what kind of, especially nowadays, if you go to any business, like if you're get into an area looking for restaurants, go look at the remarks underneath, the ratings underneath. A lot of people make decisions based on that. What is that? People actually going there and eating. People actually testing the food and the reviews. Your product will have reviews. The quality of your product will have reviews. So ultimately, you don't need to be that worried about what you're pricing. It is completely arbitrary. We're going to give you just these two frames. The first one is what Daniel gave as the ideal, and then we're going to talk about where is the starting point for you. Maybe you can talk about that too, Daniel.
Yeah, so I do want to. So Faisal, you jumped the gun in my mind. The three-part framework. There's also a second framework that I was going to cover, but you just covered it, which is arbitrariness. That pricing can be arbitrary. Even though I disagree with you on the cost of the phone being less than $10, if you think about the cost of the components, it's actually more than that. And there's also cost of labor that goes into making it. So it depends how you define the cost of that device. But the point you're making isn't about whether
but it's a lot lower than what they sell it.
The point you're making isn't whether that $10 is accurate. The point you're making is that you have to sell it for more than it costs, which is actually part two of our framework, right? So we'll come back to arbitrariness and what form of arbitrariness should you engage in the second half of the frameworks. But the three-part framework that's first is what is your ideal lifestyle pricing, and part two is what is the floor. So for example, if all in the phone costs, let's say $100 to make, can they charge $80 to sell it? Probably not if it's the only thing they sell, right? Yeah. It's the only thing they're selling. You can't charge less than you're making. So you have to know what we call the floor. What is the absolute minimum that makes it worth it, right? If you're charging less than it costs you, so let's say you have $1,000 a month in expenses and you have only space for one client and you charge that client $500 a month, that is a losing proposition. If it costs you $1,000 to serve a $500 a month client, right? Yeah. So that does not work because you're not profitable, which means at some point, if this money matters to you, and that's not always the case, but you're going to run out of money and you're going to have to do something else to make money, which means you can't continue serving people, which is why it's so important to think about what is the margin, what is the profit, and what is the cost of your time and all the things all the expenses you have to run your coaching business. Like, are you paying for a Zoom account? What are you paying for? And how do you know how much it's going to cost you? So what is the floor? What is the absolute minimum you need to charge to make it worth it? And you can think about that in a couple of ways. One is, what are your expenses? How much time are you spending? What is worth it for you? Like at this point in your career, if you were to sit on the call for, let's say, an hour a week for 12, let's say for half a year, for 6 months. Now let's say 3 months. For 12 sessions, 3 months, an hour a week, would you accept $5 for that? I don't have the answer. Only you have the answer. Would you accept $500 for that? Would you accept $2,000? Where's the line for you? At what point do you say, like, yeah, I would accept that, but I wouldn't accept lower than that? Know what that number is. Because if you know your offer, my offer is weekly for 3 months or weekly for 6 months, and I can space for 3 clients. Therefore, what's worth it for me? What's that floor? What is the floor below which I cannot go? Not what is the ideal. That's the first one. What's your ideal pricing and what's your floor pricing? Those are the two things for you to think about as you think about what you might want to charge. We still have a third place to go, but does that make sense, Faisal, the way I explained it?
Yes, it does. And there are a bunch of stuff in between. And I want to clarify a couple of things. So you mentioned that you're going to run out of money. Actually, I think the biggest danger that coaches have is energy and time. You're going to run out of energy and time more than money first. Because what most coaches who get started, they will get started as a side to do this. Because they will either have some kind of full-time job or some kind of stream of income that sustains them, and they're starting this as a side. This is the case with almost any kind of online type of business that people do. But let's say coaches, for example. So, and here's what happens. Actually, I was talking to one of our clients yesterday, and we talked about the burnout rate for coaches. Like, what is like, and coaches don't take that into account. So, and here's why. The reason why they don't take that into account, because they watch other coaches and they kind of subconsciously emulate that. You see coaches that are out there, they've been calling themselves coaches for years. But when you actually dig into what they're doing, they're not coaching anybody. It's just a title. They've been going through multiple certifications. They're learning a lot about coaching, but it's all theoretical. And they don't have a business. They don't have any clients. Maybe they had a client here and there, but there is no sustainability in it. They're still running something else. But here's what ends up happening. And I've seen this with fairly experienced coaches in terms of how long they've called themselves a coach, not in terms of the experience of actually coaching people or running a business, but how long they've called themselves a coach. They will keep calling themselves a coach for 4 or 5 years or so. And something will happen at that point. And it could be a life emergency or something new came into their life. They're not making money out of it. They've been calling themselves a coach. And the only reason they're calling themselves a coach is because they don't have any expenses to be a coach. It's literally just, it's a title. And if it was any other business,
in the water of being a coach, but they're not really able to swim because they're not really committed to getting wet.
They're not, but think about it. If this was any other kind of business, imagine you started a store, like a tangible store, no customers. I have a store, but there are no customers coming in. How long do you think it will take you to be like, I can't do this because the overhead is so high. I need to get out of this because you're
That's
losing
actually
money.
the blessing and the curse of coaching. It can have a very low overhead, but so
Yeah.
low that you're not committed.
You're not committed at all. So, and that's the beauty of coaching because 90% could be take home for you. And that's that's a really good business model, especially in the current economy, because a lot of when you like one of my family friends, he's leaving his restaurant business. You know why? He's actually making profit. Like, he's making a lot of money, not profit. He's making a lot of sales. But when he
Revenue.
looks at his expenses, the overhead, the inflation is so high, then and his skill sets are not there to manage it well, he gets overwhelmed. He doesn't know what to do. He's like, I got to get out of this.
Yeah, the
He
nice
just
thing about
can't
a coaching
sustain it.
business is it can be run with very low overhead if you're committed.
Yeah.
If you're committed, and a lot of times low overhead is a sign of lack of commitment too. If you have
Yeah.
zero overhead, that means I'm not, and I did this myself. This is why I know about this. I was very
I did too
slow
in the
to
beginning.
commit to any expenses in my coaching business. Because I was not sure I could make it work. I was not committed to making it work. I was not like in the mindset of like, hey, I'm jumping in the water and I'm swimming, and I'm willing to spend money or time or both to accomplish that.
And that's the
Or
underlying cost.
discomfort
Yeah,
too.
but there's an underlying cost that most coaches completely underestimate, and that is time and energy, both of which, especially time, is not renewable in this case. Once you lose time, it's gone, for one thing. Second, so what ends up happening is then like the burnout happens at some point, and it usually, and I've seen this happen. Like I got at least two messages from two experienced coaches this year actually. One of them said, I'm throwing the towel. I'm not going. At least he was honest. He's like, I'm not willing to put the effort to build a business. I'm like, okay, I respect that. I understand that. And I've been in touch with him for a while. The other one is like, this stuff doesn't work. Like, that's not true. You're just not admitting that you didn't do that you didn't do the work. But I've seen many coaches who have called themselves like they're very close to getting away from it. Why? Because life happens. Complexity in life increases as you grow older. A lot of people think that it reduces. It actually increases. Your family gets bigger. If you have a family, you might have a business. Might have responsibilities, unexpected things. Right now, I'm working with both of my parents. They're going through all sorts of illnesses. Like if I didn't have my business established, and if I was in a place in the beginning stages of my business, I guarantee you I would have lost focus from here because I'm so worried and I'm so concerned and like I'm constantly going back and forth. It's taking up pretty much a lot of my energy, but because my business is established, I'm already in the game and it's making me money. So I'm keeping it. But if this was a side thing where I wasn't making money from, even though I'm passionate about it, I would have probably dropped it either for a short while or maybe even completely, or it would have kind of removed. And this is what ends up happening with coaches. Something happens in their life, they drop it, a death, an illness, a new life circumstance, a baby, whatever you want to call it. They will drop it, and 2 years later, they'll be like, I want to get back to it. Guess what? The industry has changed. Coaching has shifted. Their clients have shifted. They don't understand the industry they will come back and start a new certification. And that will be a long process again. That is dangerous. You're losing that time is like once you lose that, it's gone. And the longer you kind of stay with it and not make money, the riskier it is for you to lose that.
When I think about it, it's like a miracle that anybody actually makes it through these stages.
I know,
And for
right?
me, I look back and I got very lucky that my partner was able to sustain me through the initial phases of
Yeah.
my level. Like I was seemed committed, but I don't think I was committed at the level that I need to be. And I didn't have a community like CMC to help me understand what that actually looks like when you're committed to coaching. What does it actually look like, right? And so for me, my frame is you run out of money because you're not making money because I had quit my job.
Yeah.
But for other coaches, most of the coaches, the way we recommend it is don't quit your job until you have tested and created income on your side project. You can actually succeed at a coaching business 10 to 12 hours a week if you are committed and if you are focused on overcoming that discomfort. And when you run out of money, or if you're not making money, that's a huge energy drain. So at the end of the day, it actually does become a drain on your energy. And that's almost the same thing. If you quit your job, not making money is like you're going to run out of energy faster than anything, even if you have money to support yourself, because you don't feel like you're making progress. But let's bring it back to the point of this podcast today, which is the floor pricing. Know what makes it worth it for you to charge, because if you don't ask for enough to make it worth it, you're going to feel resentful. You're going to lose energy on that. And you can say like, hey, for the first client, I'm willing to charge less than this because to me, that's worth it. This is strategic for me. It's experiential for me. I'm going to charge less than I know I probably should charge here because that is worth it. And then you have to know what's worth it for you. So keep an eye on what is worth it for you today. For your next client, what is the offer that you might say? How long does it take you to deliver? And what is worth it for you? And at the beginning, it might be the case, especially if you have another job, it might be worth it to have a low price so you can build that experience and that confidence.
Right.
It's your choice to think about this. So we have one more place to think about as well. So I want to go to the third part of the framework.
So before you move forward, I think there are two questions there. What is it worth it for you and for the client?
Well, that's exactly the third part. That's the third part.
That is it. Okay, go ahead.
That's the third part. And so the first part was what's your ideal pricing for you? Second part is what's the floor for you? What's not worth it anymore? Know what those numbers are, right? But more importantly, I think, and a lot of coaches struggle with this because we're used to an hourly compensation model from our corporate gig or from our other jobs. It's like the vast majority of society talks about like, hey, what are you going to pay per hour? I think it's important to understand what your effective hourly rates are, but from an efficiency perspective of your time. But ultimately, coaching and every other good and service is about value. It's really about what does the customer receive? What is the exchange of money for value here? And so the third way, I encourage you to think about this a lot as a coach, is what's this worth to the client? What is the value that they perceive? So you have to really like take yourself out of your own mindset. This is what's really hard in pricing and sales for coaches, especially. If you don't get out of your own way, and those first two levels are about you, the third level here is about them. And that's where you want to sit primarily in your coaching. And the value pricing is like, what would somebody value this at in their life? And there's a couple of things about this that I've been thinking about after a conversation on Monday, Faisal. One is that, yes, of course, you put yourself in their shoes, you figure out from their perspective. But two, you got to discover a lot about this client to really understand what it's worth to them. And you can explore that with them on your discovery calls, for example. But also, there's another piece of this that we didn't talk about on Monday, Faisal, but I want to introduce here, which is what can they afford? Because if something is like, if we say, hey, we can help solve your family problem that is like so debilitating to your whole family, and that's worth $1 million to them, but they don't have $1 million, they're not going to pay $1 million, even if it's worth that to them, right? So they don't have access to that kind of level of finances. So what's worth it to them and what can they afford is actually a really interesting question. Afford is a really interesting word. We can totally go down a rabbit hole there. What is important? Could they borrow $1 million? Maybe. Is that the right decision for them?
That's an important point too, because like when you look at the industry, I feel like it's a myth that's promoted by a lot of marketers and salespeople.
Yeah.
Well, don't assume that they can't afford it. Well, I think we should assume whether or not generally. So there are exceptions. So they bring exceptions and they make them the rule. The exceptions are this: that there are people who will find a way to make it happen. I did. And I assume that would be the case with a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't find a way to make it happen. You shouldn't assume whether or not somebody, if they're in a sales process with you, but as a starting point, focus on a group of people who can afford it. Like if you're and I will give you a tangible example. And I went through this one of our clients. If you're offering a package for $3,000, they better be making at least around $80K in a year. Like if somebody's making $30K and you're looking at an average household in US and the expenses they have, there's no way they're going to put in $3,000 for a coaching package, even if unless they have a huge amount of savings, which is unlikely with that kind of income level. But if they're making $80K plus, they will have a little bit side left over. That's incidentally around the time where people start thinking about investments and other things too. So this becomes an investment for them. So if you have a problem you can solve for them, you can give them results, they can consider that, oh, this is valuable for me. And that's the other point is part of the value we figure out through discovery, how valuable it is for them, the problem we're solving. But actually the real value is the results that you can help them create. Like if you can, and this is where and we can go into the quality of your service in a little bit, but really think about what kind of results you can help them create faster or can create for them. And if you can create that, and they can afford it, then they will exchange their money for the value that you're providing. But that value is not teaching. That value is not giving them perspective, but it needs to lead to some change in their life.
I love that. I'm just taking a note here because I want to remember this for later. The value question is hardest for coaches because we always let our own pricing get stuck. Like, oh, I need this much money. Okay, fine. Put that aside. You know that number is. Let it go for the purposes of understanding what it's worth to the client. Because if you know that it's worth this much to the client, then you have to also take into account, like, is it a good decision for them to do coaching? Because your job as a coach, when they join your program, will be helping them make good decisions about their life. If it's a bad decision for them to join your coaching program right now, and it's easy for you to think there's no time that it's a bad decision for them to join my coaching program now, but I would really encourage you to analyze that lens because it's a dangerous lens. If you tell your clients, hey, this $3,000 program is totally the right program for you, and you don't let them be in the driver's seat of that choice, because it might be actually a really bad decision right now in their life. If they're only making $30,000 and have no savings, putting 10% of their income could have other important effects, which you probably haven't explored yet at this point in the sales call. So in order to know whether that's a good decision, they need to explore that. You can't just make that decision without exploring these things. And most of the time that is a no, they can't afford it. It doesn't mean you can't serve them in some way. It might mean that this isn't the right pricing or program for them at this time. And that's hard to accept, especially in the beginning. It's like, oh, well, in the industry, as Faisal said, they're like, no, they gotta make the decision now within 2 days and pressure them and make sure they don't like fall away and forget how important this is. That is true, but you don't need to pressure them to accomplish that. You can stay in touch with them to help them make a reasoned decision over time. And if they don't join you, that's okay. As long as you're being valuable to them, they will understand the value you're going to create, and they can figure out what that's worth to them and whether it's the right decision. That's where you help them. You help them make decisions in coaching, including about the coaching. And that's the first big decision they're going to make with you, most likely. Maybe not the first one as you go through the discovery session and process, but that's a big decision they're going to make with you. They have to trust that you have their best interests at heart, not yours. And that's why you have to release what you get out of it for helping them make this decision. That's what coaching is really all about. Letting go of yourself. My number one rule about coaching is it's not about you, it's about them. So how can you make this decision not about you, but about them?
Yes, and what Daniel's also referring to is your sales process. And unfortunately, most coaches don't even know that there's a sales process. There's a nurturing cycle for clients. And this was in my mind as well. And every coach that I meet is like, well, in their mind is like, I'm gonna get connected, get on a call with them, tell them that I do this coaching and make my offer. That is not a good sales process. And in fact, what makes it worse is that the people who are, a lot of times they kind of give coaches that perception, people who are running certification. Also, when they run into business coaches, they give them a similar thing. In fact, business coaches will often say, don't demonstrate anything. Don't show them what you have. Just a lot of them, because they don't, they want to give them a peek. They want you to explore their pain points and they want you to explore their goals, but they don't want you to demonstrate anything in the process. It's like, don't give them the thing. Get them to want it. But I think that's primarily because they haven't been a coach who's actually worked through this. They don't understand how it actually works. They're basing it on any other product or service that they might, and they're right from a business point of view, but they're not right in the context of how coaching works.
This will work for something like an Apple, where you can't give them the apple before they pay and then ask them to pay for Apple. You like the apple gets consumed, but an apple that keeps on giving, like the golden goose, is different. If you have the golden goose and they lays a golden egg, you can give them that first golden egg because there's more golden eggs where that came from.
Yeah, and they don't actually, unless it's a business coach who's built their own business, they don't get that. It just doesn't hit them because they haven't been in that industry. Now, the key here is like we actually go through this in detail in our community. We help you build your sales process. A lot of coaches think that they need to understand marketing more. Actually, marketing is really big. There's so many aspects of marketing that it will take you a lifetime to master, and it might not be useful for you because you're not trying to probably make millions of dollars. Even if you are, the starting point for you to be a better marketing for now. The starting point for you to be a better marketer is probably sales. Once you understand, and sales is the most useful piece for you as a coach, and a lot of coaches run away from sales. even though they don't like marketing, they're more open to exploring marketing more than sales, because one, sales is much more vulnerable. It's much scarier. You're getting on calls with people. You're trying to reach out to people. You have to build a process. You have to test it out. A lot of the stuff that goes into that. But essentially, for you to build a business, you need to have a customer journey process, a sales process, a nurturing process, whatever you want to call it. That determines whether or not you make enough offers. If the offers are converting, it will test your pricing, all sorts of stuff around that. We actually go in detail around that. Definitely, if you're watching this, watch another video in the podcast, the 7 steps to high ticket coaching. It'll give you a view of, it's a 20 plus, 25-minute plus video that I created. I visually walk you through what that might look like. Most coaches don't think about that, but that will help you understand what we're talking about a little bit in more detail. So definitely check out that video. Go ahead, Danny.
Just something you made me think of. Why is marketing less important than sales at this stage in your coaching career, at the early stages? Well, the reason is sales is like the nozzle on your hose. If you have only a drip, at least your nozzle's working. But if you don't have the sales working, no matter how high you turn on that marketing faucet, you're never going to convert anybody out the nozzle, right? If your nozzle is not successful, that's the sales part. Your faucet will not do anything, because that's where the sales is fed. So if you can turn on, if you're really good at marketing, but you're not good at sales, you're never going to convert that marketing. So investing your time in the marketing, you can't scale that without having a proper sale process. Yeah. If you know how to sell, all of a sudden, even your marketing doesn't have to be that great to help your conversion like actually succeed, because your sales process works. And actually, in coaching specifically, sales is actually more about coaching. It's about bringing people to understand the right decision for themselves is to join your program, if that is the case, if you both believe that. And if that's the case, then that's where your sales skills matter. And later, when you're getting good at that, getting people to that point and then being able to convert them because it is the right decision for them, then maybe it's time later to turn up the marketing a little bit, right?
Yeah. And also, there's one point to be addressed here is marketing is important, which the main marketing for most coaches in the initial stages or the first few years of their business is to find people that they can serve. You don't have to run a huge social media campaign or ads or all sorts of elaborate things for you to find. You have more than enough people around you. And even if you do go towards marketing, you can actually create a small container where you have a few hundred people that you can actually build a relationship with and actually take them through your sales process, and and make them offers, and they will actually buy your program. We've had coaches in our community who've done that. I've done that, but I don't have to master marketing to do that. I just have to understand how to find the right people. And yes, the main part of marketing that's important is putting yourself out there as a coach. You need to be willing to put yourself out there in some capacity, whether you're doing it in your community, whether you're doing it online, so where people know that you're doing this. If nobody knows, nobody's going to buy from you. But beyond that, you don't need to become an expert copywriter. You don't need to become an expert social media marketer. You don't need to become an expert on ads. That stuff will take time. In fact, as you build your business and you get more resources, more than likely you're going to hire somebody who's better than you to run those anyway. I have. That's why I hired a marketing person, because I don't understand it as well as I need to, and I don't have the time to go towards mastering that right now, or at least that's not my focus. So I hired somebody to do that for me. I have some level of understanding of that, but the key here is the main marketing, which is a scary thing for a lot of coaches, put themselves out there and actually declare that they're a coach and consistently tell people that this is what they do and actually serve people with that at a higher level. And then most of the 90% of what you're going to do is sales after that.
Yeah. And I love that. But I think we're getting a little far afield. Yeah, when I'm talking about marketing, I'm just talking about like the automated versions that you're referring to now. Yeah. But let's go back to where we came from, which is value pricing. Ultimately, at the end of the day, having the value clear to you and the client is part of sales, right? That's part of that discovery process, which I consider part of sales, especially in coaching. Okay, so we talked about our framework, our 3-part framework, which is ideal pricing. What's your ideal lifestyle? What would that pricing be for the programs that you have and the number of clients and the space you have, etc. And then floor pricing, which is what is the minimum you need to make it worth it for you? And that changes over time, of course, but know what's worth it for you right now. And then 3, what is it worth it to the client? I would argue that's the most important. And don't forget, what can they afford is an important part of that and helping them make the right decision. The last part I want to talk about is what we talked about earlier, which is arbitrariness. Pricing is arbitrary. You can charge whatever you want. There's always going to be somebody somewhere who's willing to pay it and somebody who's not, right? It doesn't really matter what you charge. But at the end of the day, you need to make that decision. And the way I would guide people to make that decision for themselves is like, charge a price that you can feel mostly confident about, right?
Yeah.
But maybe a little bit higher to give you a little bit of that stretch. And again, you have to decide in context. Like if it's at the beginning, you know you can feel really confident by charging a low price. Great. If you need that confidence, that will build. I would say like don't underrate the value of confidence in that process. But I encourage people to just charge something that makes them feel a little stretched, like they have to step up and deliver that level of value, right? Like if you're thinking about your pricing, think about what makes you confident. What pricing would be make you super confident to deliver the value, and what level would you like? Oh, I have to stretch myself to deliver value at that level. And those two together will give you a guidance on where to go. I would say like, especially in the beginning stage, just focus on confidence more. And then as you go more, you can stretch yourself more.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Faisal? Yeah. How would you describe it, Faisal, for you?
That's a really important point, and I want to address the tangibly how that works in the industry. And this is where coaches get actually very confused. So for example, certified high performance coaches, when they come from that world, and it is a really high class certification. And you pay a lot to be a certified high performance coach, and it is a really good certification. I agree with that. But they're kind of given this idea that as soon as you get certified, you can charge $10,000 or $6,000 or $300 an hour. But here's the problem. I don't disagree with the premise of that, the principle of that. Charge more than less because you have a good certification. But here's the problem. Most coaches who come there, they don't have the experience. Some do, but most of them don't have the experience to charge at that level. What I mean by that is they are not confident whether or not they can deliver the results, even with the certification. So they will go in thinking that they have to charge at a $6,000 for a 3-month package, but they deep down they know that they don't know if they can deliver that value. So they completely doubt that. They will go in, that's why they won't even make the offer. And they don't give themselves permission that I can charge a little bit lower. So here's and I want you to look at it from a business point of view. Is like, imagine I developed this pen, and this is a digital pen to write on a tablet. I developed a pen that I'm going to sell online. Now I tested it. It's a prototype a little bit, but I don't have enough data to know how much this is worth. And maybe these pens are worth $500. But I'm going to see. Let me test this out. Let me offer this for a fraction of that. Let's say for $50 to 300 people, and collect data for them. See how much this is worth for them. Is it working? Work out some of the challenges around it. When I offer it at $50, it seems low, and it might not be as valuable for me. But what's more valuable long term is the data that I'm getting from the clients that are using this, that they're feeding back to me. And once I work out all the problems out of it, then I can charge 500 or even more. But so what is it giving me? Is it giving me the data, and the data is giving me confidence to serve more people, and it's giving me the confidence to put this out there. Now, if you put that in a coaching context, most coaches have no confidence whatsoever to put themselves out there, to make their offer. So they will start with, if they're starting with a big certification, they might think, well, I should be charging a higher level. But when you talk to them, they don't have the confidence. And then the opposite of it is also true. They come from a certification that didn't talk about pricing and offers at all. And they're like, I'm going to charge like $50 per session or $10 per session. Like, one, is that worth it for you? And who's going to take that seriously? And they don't have any kind of concept of how to take them from point A to point B. And they don't know what to do at all.
It's actually better to charge with saying referrals and testimonials is a better charge than $10 a session. Like, I would rather say it's going to be free if you give me referrals and testimonials for this what we're gonna do. That way you build up all of that, and then you don't like price it at such a low place that nobody values it. Like if I go to the store and it's like, oh, there's this Apple computer that I've always wanted, it's going for $5. I'm like, what's wrong with that computer? What's wrong? Why is it so cheap? Like sometimes it's too cheap to be true or to be valuable. And in coaching, coaches like discount them to that point where they're like, it's too cheap. So like you got to be thoughtful about that too. I think the value of a referral and testimonial is so high in your own confidence and for other clients that it would be totally well worth saying that if you're charging too low for it to be like really credible, to be valuable.
Yeah. And the key point here is that ultimately the market will decide what your services are worth, not you. And this is a hard thing because a lot of times coaches, well, I have all this experience. I've gone through all these challenges. Nobody cares. to be honest, nobody cares what you've gone through. People care, but the market doesn't care what you've gone through. They care about what kind of results you can give them. That's how the free market works, is that you put something out there and people test it out, and based on that, they will give you referrals, they will buy more of your products, they will stay, their LTV increases based on the quality of your product, all that stuff. But the point here is, give the market the chance to determine how valuable. Don't decide it based on some ego thing that, well, I've spent this. It doesn't matter, to be honest. Once you put it out there, so what is the starting point? And let's make it really simple. The simplest way is what Daniel says, is just, what's the lowest that's worth it? Let's say the lowest that's worth it for you is like $500 a package. And start with a package, not hourly. It could be 6 sessions. It could be 12 sessions. We don't have time to get into that. Maybe we'll talk about that later. What's the minimum you can charge that will be worth it for you, so you can collect the data? You can get referrals, you can get testimonials, but you're also getting paid. It's giving you a feel of what it's like to work with somebody. And then here's the beauty of business. If you're charging $500 today for a package, by next year you can charge $2,000 if you wanted to. It's not like you're at a job and there are nobody observing how much you're charging here and there. And usually people find out about your package much later, later on in your, and in 2 years you could charge $5,000 if you wanted to. I've seen coaches go from like $500 to $5,000 in the span of a year and a half. But they developed the confidence to sell to enough people to get the results, testimonials, and they got referrals that they could offer at a higher rate. That's the power of business, where you can exponentially grow based on the quality of your service and product. It's not like a job. And most people come from job world, so they're scared to offer very low. You don't need to be scared. Start with the smallest point, but make it a little bit higher, so it gives you enough to go on, but it pushes the client to invest a little bit so they can actually take it seriously. And
you brought a really, really interesting point right there at the end, Faisal, because we got to wrap this up. But what makes sure the client shows up too is a good question. Like, not only what can they afford, and I'm going to add this to the notes here. How much do they need to pay to show up at their best? Like, so if they're paying $10, it's not going to be that big a deal if they just cancel a session, don't show up, or don't play full out. But if they're paying more, there's also a point that they're like, what you pay more for, you pay more attention to. And there's a limit to that, of course, but it's generally true. I'm not saying charge only based on that, but think about that. If you're charging too low for them to pay attention, the signal is that this doesn't actually matter that much.
Yeah.
That could be a counter signal. I'm not going to say this is the only thing that matters, because it's not. But we should be thoughtful about, from the client's perspective, what does this pricing do? How does that make sense? Right. So I want us to summarize kind of all the things we talked about. And by the way, if you like what we've talked about today, this is the kind of stuff we talk about in our community. And we actually troubleshoot and support people on their very pricing questions, their very specific pricing questions, in our support calls, and which we do monthly live in our community and weekly for our pro members. And so I encourage everybody to go to cmc.coach to see how to join our community. And if you want to go pro and get more support, you can do that too. But just to summarize the 2 things we talked about, one is you have ideal pricing, floor pricing, and value pricing. And number 2, we have pricing is arbitrary. Think about confidence and stretch. And, when you think about the value pricing piece of it, don't forget to think about what are the results you're providing worth, whether they can afford it, and what level will make them show up. Yeah. So, and again, you decide. So it's arbitrary. So you decide based on all the above. That's some good data for you to think about all of that, so you can come up with a price. Yeah. Right. And you can also just use your instinct and see what happens.
And if you get and we're giving very general perspective here because we don't know your specific situation, and that's what we do within the community. We actually help clients come up with specific numbers based on their situation, and it's hard to do on a podcast. But if you're completely confused, like, that's a lot of things to think about, $1,000 to $2,000 is a good starting point for a 3-month package. Start with that and see what happens. You're not going to go wrong. Let's say you feel like it's too low. You see it, you're going to increase it. But if you offer it to 10 people, nobody's taking it, or 15 people, nobody's taking it, that means you're actually charging too high based on your skill sets.
Yeah.
Test it out.
And actually, my favorite way to do this is something I learned from Christian Mickelson, which was, if you are getting somebody who just can't buy because of the price point, that's the only objection left, you can actually say, like, well, do you really want to do this? Yes. Would you do it for free? Yes. Well, then, let's find somewhere in the middle. Let's figure out a price that would work. So if you're charging 1,000, they say no. You're like, would you do it for 800?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's go. Or if you know what your floor is, say like, would you do it for that? And if they say no, then you can't go any lower than that. So you don't need to offer it for lower than your floor, right? That's why you need to know the number. So
And the point here is not for you to make a lot of money. The point, and I love this from Alex Hermosi, is that in the beginning of your business, you're going to be in the season of learning, not earning. Earning comes a little bit later on. But I need you to earn so you understand the feeling of it. You understand, you will take it a little bit more seriously. The client will take it seriously. You will actually feel like a coach. That feeling and the data that you collect, the referrals, the testimonials is more important than the money that you're gaining. And about 6 months after that, when you do that consistently, the earning will become more important. 2 years after that, it will become even more important, but you will naturally charge more based on the confidence that you develop by the actions that you've taken. Most coaches don't do any of this stuff. And 2 years later, it's like, well, I should be charging $10,000, but I'm not getting any clients. But who have you worked with to know?
what work have you done to make that possible, right?
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Great conversation. I think this was longer than we intended, so that's fine.
Always.
I thought we could cover this in 30 minutes. No. Yes, we're not able to be so short on this because there's a lot to cover, and we could probably go on for another full day on this topic alone. In fact, we're doing a mastermind at in our in-person event in September. So if you want to join that, go to cmc.coach, join our community for free, and become part of that, or just join our email list. And you can find out about that. If you actually want to join it right now, you can come to where is it? LA to join us for the day, and you can just send us an email at support@coachingmasterycommunity.com, and we'll get back to you. Just say like, I want to go to the mastermind. So
yeah. Or post a comment below and we'll see it.
Right.
The easiest way you can reach out to us. But the fastest way for you to get access to all the things that we're doing is just join our community at cmc.coach. It's 30 days for free. You'll take advantage of our whole course. You will be kept accountable. You will go through our live sessions. We have a support call once a month live for all our members. We can actually troubleshoot any of the areas of your business, your skill sets, any of the things that you're working through. But we're excited to see you on the other side, and hope you have an incredible week, and we'll see you next week.